I'm Elizabeth Newsom and welcome to my BookTube channel. So today I'm doing a little something called rating my wrap-up. So you've probably seen other booktubers doing wrap-ups, and this is essentially the same thing. I'll review what I've read in January, but in addition to that, I'll also be rating them in order of which I enjoyed the most. And this is kind of just a personal challenge for myself because I feel like a lot of times when I review books, I explain what the book is about, I say a few positive things, and that's kind of it. So I'm hoping with these wrap-ups I'll learn to give you guys kind of a more objective measure of how much I enjoyed the book. And it's also a personal challenge for myself to just kind of be a better reviewer when it comes to comparing books, which is actually really hard for me because I personally struggle with comparison, and I hate to compare a book that someone wrote and have them not feel like they measure up to other people. But I don't think criticism and comparison are inherently bad. I think it's mainly just how I personally react to it, which is definitely something I need to work on because both can be huge opportunities for improvement. And another thing, if there's a book towards the bottom of my list, that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it or that I don't think you guys should read it. It just means that there were other books that month that I enjoyed more. And sometimes my enjoyment of a book is just based on my mood or what I feel like reading at the moment. So with that, here's my rating my wrap-up video for January 2018. So first of all, let's start with a few nonfiction books. We'll start at the bottom of the list, which is number 4, and that's Everybody's First Gliding Book. So as I've mentioned earlier, I'm currently pursuing a gliding license, and this book was quite literally my first gliding book. So it was really helpful and informative, but I didn't put it any higher on the list because it's not very thorough and it doesn't cover a lot of topics. And then there were a few typos and things that detracted from the overall quality of the book. It still covers a decent amount of topics, and it has been informative and helpful. Number 3 is Writing the Breakout novel. This book had tons of great information on writing, but it's also about the 8th book on writing that I've read in the past 2 years. So it was great to be reminded of the writing techniques and the aspects of novels that really make them spectacular. But ultimately, I feel like the points in this book were all ones that I've heard before, which of course is understandable given that I've read several books in this nonfiction category. So I did enjoy it in the overall review on writing techniques, but there were other nonfiction books that I enjoyed more this month. For number 2, I have Preventing Suicide. So another project I have for this year is starting a suicide prevention program at my church, which I feel like is kind of ambitious given that I have no background in that whatsoever. But I know there's a need for it, so I figured it was worth a shot. And to help give me ideas for the program and something I could present to the pastors and leaders in our church, I read this book, and it lists a few great resources and websites, places where you can take seminars on suicide, and speakers that you can invite to come educate your congregation on suicide. And this book is specifically geared towards pastors, chaplains, and other church leaders. So it was really great to have a Christian perspective on that. And because it's geared towards pastors, it has a lot of great ideas on how to help people through that and also how to educate your congregation on the topic. It was a little long and it took like 5 hours to read or so. But of course, this is a subject that requires a lot of thought, and I felt like this book covered the topic of suicide very well. It talks about suicide theories, how you can prevent suicide, how to help people after a suicide. And my number 1 nonfiction book would have to be the YouTube Black Book. Now, I believe this book had a few typos in it, but the information was just so unique and so helpful, it kind of overcame any little typos that I saw. Essentially, the YouTube Black Book is about how to grow your channel, so hopefully you'll see me implementing some of the tips that I learned from this book. So in this book, you get a few stories about successful YouTube channels and a few tips on SEO, keywords, how to use Google AdWords. And there are a lot of tips and advice in here that I would have never discovered on my own, at least not without a few years of experience. Now, on to the fun stuff, the fiction. So we're starting at number 6, and that would be Spies and Saddles. It's a short Wattpad book, and I like the concept and premise, and it has potential. Essentially, it's about these girls at a Catholic school, and one of them's actually a secret agent, and then her friend gets wrapped up in this secret agent world of her friends. So first of all, problem for me was that it was a short story, and I know some people like short stories because they're easy to read and they're short, but I like novels to be like a journey. So I wasn't a huge fan of its length. And then the development of the main character kind of going into this world of secret agents and finding the bad guy was a little slow. But then when it reached the climax, it felt like it all happened really, really fast. And then suddenly, right before the climax, the love interest is introduced. And being the romance fan that I am, I kind of wish the love interest was introduced a bit earlier to give their relationship time to develop. But once the love interest was introduced, it was pretty cute, though it was kind of insta-lovey. But I enjoyed the thing they had going on there. I just wish there was more of it. And to my knowledge, there are 2 other books in this series out, so it might expand further on their relationship. Number 5 is Captive Oceans. I did enjoy this book. It's had some really good solid themes in it. But for me, one of the main problems was that I really had trouble liking the male love interest. He's a pirate, so that's pretty cool. But he's kind of capricious and short-tempered. So I guess he was an interesting character, but sometimes I just had trouble connecting with him. So I wasn't entirely sure why the main character was attracted to him just because I wasn't. And this story had a few inconsistencies, and I feel like it could have used a bit of editing. But something I really liked about this book was how this main character was kind of like Jane Eyre, and she's really feisty and determined, and she has strong principles. I guess I kind of wish that there was just a better guy in the story for her. Number 4 is The Wedding Dress. So in The Wedding Dress, it's kind of half contemporary, half historical, and it's one of those books that switches between the two. Both the historical and contemporary stories are connected. So first of all, I'm not a huge fan of contemporary anyway, but that, of course, is a very personal opinion, and I doubt it applies to all of you guys. And then in this book, kind of like in the Spies and Saddles book, I wish there had been more development of the romantic relationships. So in both of the parallel stories, the historical side and the contemporary side, it felt like the relationships were gradually developing, and then all of a sudden they were married at the end. And for me, it felt like a complete and sudden shift. And I wish that their relationships had gradually gotten more intense and more developed over time. Instead, it kind of felt slow and then married. Again, romance reader here, so that might not be a concern for everyone. Number 3 is The Awakening by Tamara Leigh. Tamara Leigh, as you guys know, is one of my go-to authors. She's a really good writer, and this is probably the best written fiction book that I've read this month. But for some reason, I wasn't as addicted, I guess, to this book as I was to 2 other books, which I'll mention in a few minutes. And I kind of gave you reasons about editing and development of relationships in the other books, but I'm not sure I can give you a reason for this because it's really well written, it has a good plot, it has a good development of the relationships. I honestly think it might just have been the mood I was in when I read it as compared to the next 2. Speaking of which, number 2 is She Owns the Night. So I wanted to reread this for a few weeks, and then I finally got to it, and it was every bit as sweet as I remembered. If you want to hear more about this book in an excerpt, then you could check out my Valentine's Day book tag. And then number 1 is Betrothed to Jackfrost. This is a Wattpad book, and like I've said, there were other books that were better well written. But wow, I was just really, really addicted and engaged when I read it. It was New Year's Day, and it was supposed to be like a productive day for me. But instead what happened is I had a quick Skype call with Sarah, and then my motivation just vanished. Like, I didn't want to do anything else productive. I didn't want to work out, or write, or edit videos, so I just spent the rest of the day reading 40 chapters of this and stayed in my PJs until 3 p.m. Like, I don't even know what happened. I cannot remember the time before that when I stayed in my PJs that long. Like, not even on Christmas. So I think the romance in this book combined with my really lazy mood just made it really captivating. But even outside of my mood, it is a really fun romance to read. Honestly, at first, Jackfrost is a little creepy and he tries to kill her and he has anger management problems. But as the story develops, his character develops a lot too, and in the end, it has a really good message and theme about love. And I cannot wait for the second book. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And in the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts about my rating my wrap-up video. Like, in rating the books, was I any more helpful or informative in my book reviews? Let me know down below, and I will see you next time.